All right. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Bureau of Automotive Repair Advisory Group, also known as BAG. You'll see that phrase around when we talk about this group and its meetings throughout the year. My name is Patrick Duray. I want to welcome everyone. I'm the Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and this is our third of the 4 quarterly meetings that we have scheduled each and every year, unless with the asterisk, unless it's a pandemic, as many of you noticed and were part of or experienced with us having to cancel a couple of meetings during the unfortunate few years during the pandemic. We've got we had a really, we thought, busy agenda, and we would take us pretty much up until the 1 o'clock hour where we're scheduled to end. And unfortunately, one of our advisory group members, a new member who was going to give us a presentation today, Tess Dubois-Carey from UTI, took ill and notified us yesterday that she was not going to be able to attend or present today. So we'll move her agenda item to the October meeting. So we'll probably get everyone out closer to a true lunch hour at maybe around 12, maybe a little past that time. We are meeting in person, obviously, as you can all tell, but we used to have hybrid meetings that we started toward the tail end of the pandemic and had been doing up until last month, our last meeting in April. Unfortunately, the WebEx, which is the platform for that virtual meeting experience, is not available for today's meeting. So we were just going to be meeting in person with the ability for all those who want to attend remotely or participate remotely to do it through our normal webcast experience. Cesar Victoria from the Department of Consumer Affairs is our webcaster and will monitor all activity through the webcast. That webcast allows us to record the meeting, put it up on our website, and make it available to all, even if they could not or cannot experience the meeting in person or listen in remotely today. We are going to entertain questions through the webcast. And that can be done by emailing the executive office at the Bureau of Automotive Repair's go-to person. Our executive assistant, Zach Richardson, and his email address, I'm going to probably read this a couple of times, is Zachary, not with a K, there's an H in here, ZACHARY .Richardson, RICHARDSON, at dca.ca.gov. Again, Zachary, ZACHARY .Richardson, at dca.ca.gov for anyone who wishes to send us a comment and have us respond to it or a question during the course of the meeting. So without further ado, I'd like to do some introductions. First, my executive staff, you've met Zach Richardson, our assistant in the front office, Clay Leake, who you'll see a little bit later on during a presentation. Clay Leake, all things IT or information technology and smog check operations. You've met Clay many times before with presentations over the last several years. And Bill Thomas is Deputy Chief. He's hiding behind one of the pillars here. Deputy Chief for Field Operations and Enforcement Division. And then our third executive officer is Linda Jansen, who has had to take she's out on leave for the next week or so. Unfortunately, cannot make today's meeting. Even though she's on the agenda to give a presentation, some unfortunate things happened in the last couple of days, family issues, and had to be taken care of. So Linda Jansen is the Deputy Chief for all things relating to our administration division. That's our consumer assistance program, licensing operations, our personnel office, contracts, business office, facilities management, and those sort of activities. Now to introduce our bar advisory group members who are attending in person today. We'll start to my far right with Mr. Conover. Name and organization. Green light on the button will allow us, and I was supposed to announce this, please make sure when at all times throughout the course of the meeting, have this little green button on. We can't record very easily. Cesar will admonish me if we are, there it is. To make sure we get everyone's comments on the recording, please make sure this little button at the bottom is on, and if you want to unmic yourself because you're no longer speaking, just click it again, and the green light will turn off. Sorry about that, Gary. Please introduce yourself.
Gary Conover, representing the California Automotive Wholesalers Association.
Good morning, Matt Webb, representing the Automotive Oil Change Association.
Good morning, Jack Mulladonoff, representing the California Auto Body Association.
Hello, David Robinette, representing the Inter-Industry Conference on Auto Collision Repair, that is ICAR.
And I'm Dave Kusa with the Automotive Service Councils of California.
John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition.
Matt Ralston, representing Universal Technical Institute, and I'm filling in for Tess Dubois Carey.
Anthony Bento, California New Car Dealers Association.
Nikki Ayers, Cali BC Small Business Owners.
Jeff Cox, Automotive Maintenance and Repair Association.
And Brian Pearson, representing AAA of Northern California.
Are there any other members who haven't taken a seat because they couldn't find room at the dais here? We can squeeze you off to the side. Okay, just want to check. All right, thank you for the introductions, and welcome all of you and all of those in attendance in the audience today. I hope everyone is enjoying their summer. It is getting extremely hot here in the Sacramento area, but I assure everyone the evenings are the reason we live through those hot days, because they are extremely beautiful to take the dogs on a walk or whatever pleases you. But hope you're having an enjoyable summer. Let's get started with our presentations. Is there any other introductions or any other comments for the good of the order before we get going with the agenda? Cesar or Zach, anything I need to remind anyone? Okay, at this time, let's get started then. Our first presentation is going to be our normal update on all things legislation and regulations as it relates to bills that we're tracking and regulations on which we are working. And here to give that update are Holly O'Connor and Kayla Shelton in our executive office at the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Welcome and good morning. Good to see you both. Who goes first? Who does what? Who's legislation, who's regulations, I'm guessing?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yes. Hi, everyone. As most of you know, I'm Holly O'Connor.
I'm Kayla Shelton.
And let me see. All right, we will start with some important legislative dates. Currently, they're on summer recess, but September 1st is the last day for fiscal committees to meet and report bills to the floor. September 8th is the last day to amend bills. September 14th is the last day for each house to pass bills. And the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills is October 14th. And as you know, we do try to have the most current information on the slides. However, given the nature of the processes, not everything may and not everything does, I can tell you, reflect the latest updates. So the websites for the most current information are provided. These are the 2023 legislative bills that we've been tracking. There are 3 catalytic converter bills and then 4 other bills. But before I start with the catalytic converter bills, there is a new bill that we don't have a slide for that we recently became aware of. It's SB 429. And this bill would require vehicles used on a transportation network company platform to satisfy a vehicle inspection established by the California Public Utilities Commission. And for those of you that don't know, a transportation network company is an organization operating in California that provides prearranged transportation services using an online application to connect passengers with the drivers, such as Uber or Lyft. And this inspection is to be performed by a mechanic affiliated with an automotive repair dealer registered by BAR. And this would require a transportation network company to compensate the participating drivers. This bill was last amended on July 12th and is currently with the Assembly Appropriations Committee. The first catalytic converter bill is AB 641. This was revised and re-referred to the Senate Committee on Appropriations on July 13th. And since this slide was created, the bill has slightly changed. It still revises the definition of an automobile dismantler to include a person who keeps or maintains on their property or in their possession of control 2 or more unregistered motor vehicles that are no longer intended for or in condition for use on highways. And the main difference is that they changed it to 9 or more used catalytic converters that have been cut from a motor vehicle using a sharp implement. And this also another addition, it would make the first violation an infraction and any subsequent violations a misdemeanor. This still won't apply to vehicles or catalytic converters that are used for restoration or replacement parts or to a junk dealer, recycler, commercial enterprise, or core recycler, even if they do possess 9 or more catalytic converters. The next one is AB 1519. This was re-referred to the Assembly Committee on Appropriations on July 12th. And this would prohibit any person from removing or altering a VIN number that has been added to a catalytic converter or from knowingly possessing 3 or more catalytic converters that have been altered. Next is SB 55. This was amended in the Assembly on July 5th and on July 10th was re-referred to the Assembly Committee on Appropriations. This bill includes motorcycles, and it would prohibit the dealer or retailer from selling a vehicle equipped with a catalytic converter unless that catalytic converter has been engraved or etched with the VIN of the vehicle to which it is attached. And until January 1st, 2025, a vehicle purchased from a dealer licensed in California who is also licensed in another state and does not have a warranty service facility in California is exempt until that January 1st, 2025 date. And Kayla will update you on the rest of the bills.
Thank you, Holly. So first up, we have AB 1263. This is our sunset bill. As of July 11th, it was amended and re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. So this bill will extend the sunset date to January 1st of 2028. It will amend the definition of an automotive repair dealer to include anyone who receives compensation for referred or sublet automotive repair services. This bill would authorize BAR to adopt regulations regarding storage fees charged by ARDs in accordance with civil and vehicle codes and any regulations of the Insurance Commission pertaining to vehicle towing and storage fees adopted to the sections 758.5 and 790.03 of the Insurance Code. This bill will also authorize BAR to establish a centralized network to inspect vehicles 1995 and older who require a BAR 97 inspection. This inspection can be performed at either a referee station or a subcontracted licensed smog check station. This bill states that no earlier than January 1st of 2025, vehicles 1996 to 1999 will be tested using onboard diagnostics or OBD instead of the bar 97 tests, effectively requiring OBD inspections for all 1996 and newer vehicles. And I would like to note that the second bullet has been amended from the bill. So the second bullet, which notes the exemption of a vehicle from biannual inspections upon BAR's determination that the vehicle warrants a temporary waiver, has been amended and actually removed from the bill. So that no longer pertains to this bill. This bill would also update the definition of a qualified smog check technician to include both smog check technicians and smog check inspectors. This bill updates what's considered a fraudulent inspection to include clean plugging, clean gassing, clean tanking, or any other fraudulent inspection practice. This bill also makes technical cleanup updates to the business and professions and vehicle code regarding the transition from the brake and lamp program to the vehicle safety systems inspection program. And lastly, this bill would require a vehicle safety systems inspection certificate for the sale of salvaged vehicles. Okay, that was a big one. Next, we're going to move on to the Senate bills. So Senate Bill 301 is a zero-emission aftermarket conversion project bill. As of June 27th, it was passed with recommendation to consent and calendar and re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. This bill would establish a zero-emission aftermarket conversion project by allocating no less than $2 million from the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. This project would provide a rebate to any California resident with an eligible vehicle that has been converted to a zero-emission vehicle. The rebate is limited to one per vehicle with a value up to $4,000. So the next Senate bill is 544. This is the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. So legislation was passed last year amending provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to extend the ability of state bodies, which includes BAR, to conduct meetings virtually through July 1st of 2023. Absent the passing of new legislation to extend these provisions, we will not be allowed to conduct meetings strictly virtually after July 1st of 2023. So this means we may conduct either strictly physical meetings without electronic access, or we can still hold virtual meetings, but there must be a physical meeting location where the public may at least observe the meeting remotely from a physical location. I would like to note that although the Bureau of Automotive Repair is not subject to Bagley-Keene, as the Bar Advisory Group is not codified in statute, the Department of Consumer Affairs has established expectations that the Bureau and other similar programs observe this as best practice, the requirements of Bagley-Keene for all open meetings, including but not limited to our Bar Advisory Group meetings. Okay. We also have Senate Bill 615, which is Vehicle Traction Battery Bill. As of June 20th, it was set for its first hearing, but was canceled at the request of the author. This bill would require all vehicle traction batteries to be recovered, reused, repurposed, or remanufactured to eventually be recycled at the end of its useful life. It would require vehicle manufacturers, dealers, auto dismantlers, ARDs, and non-vehicle secondary users to be responsible for recycling that battery at the end of its life. It would require a battery supplier to create a core exchange program by January 1st of 2025, and it would require battery suppliers or secondary users to provide reports regarding the removal and purchasing of these batteries to the Department of Toxic Services, or DTSC. This is you, my dear.
All right, that's it for the bills that we've been tracking. Does anyone have questions?
Let's take a few questions or comments. I just going back to a couple of the slides. AB 1263, our sunset bill. just the status is, says Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development. For point of clarification, that's the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development. The bill's already made it out of the Assembly. It was actually on a vote of 75-0, I believe, so no opposition, as you would expect with the Sunset Bill, which reauthorizes the Bureau for another 4 years. The bill will be eventually going to the full Senate for a vote, and then because there were some amendments on the Senate side, it'll have to go back to the Assembly for concurrence. But our expectation is we'll get to the governor's desk sometime shortly, by the end of the session for sure, and get to the governor around early September, I'm guessing. And then you went into more detail than I did in my opening remarks about the fact that we're not using the virtual teleconference platform to conduct today's meeting very appropriately and adequately addressed the reasons why in your discussion or update on SB 544, the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. So that is why we were unable to host this meeting through the WebEx platform today. But we are very much looking to see this bill get to the governor, and if it's signed, we will be back to a teleconference hybrid meeting platform in conjunction with an in-person meeting at the beginning of the new year. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Conover on the far right.
I have a question on AB 1263. It isn't really pertaining to the legislation per se, but I noticed on the agenda we're not talking about the vehicle safety inspection program. So the last bullet point on AB 1263, I'm assuming the regulations that will be developed will develop the certification that the seller will be providing to the buyer of the salvage safety inspection car.
So good question. That is actually that requirement, and I'm glad you brought that up, is something that came about at our last advisory group meeting. I think there was a common and widespread belief that needed to be in a bill. I took that message right away after the meeting concluded back to the committee consultant who is in charge of this bill on the Assembly side, and we had a discussion, and I passed on the message that was of concern. So that provision did get in the bill, as you've seen. So that's the good news for all those who are advocating for such. We were able to find a vehicle. Obviously, our Sunset Bill made the most sense to do that. The regulations, we'll get an update on the regulations shortly and that will be one of the packages that is shared. Right now, there isn't a provision in the regulations, and I'm not sure that there needs to be, but since it's in statute, this will carry the weight of that requirement. I'm not sure that there's any further clarification, which is the purpose of regulations, to define a statute, fill in the gaps where there's missing requirements or expectations of the authority, the general authority. I think that the statute, in our estimation, at least at this point in time, is that no further definition or clarification in the regulation package is necessary, but we'll take that comment of yours into careful consideration as we finalize the regulation package that you'll hear shortly about.
And I wanted to talk about the visual piece of paper you get when the salvage title is, I'm going to use the word relieved, because of the vehicle inspection certificate clearing the title for roadworthiness. And I don't know if this is a good time to talk about it or during the regulation description.
Let's get to the regulation itself and the update on that package. It may have addressed your question that you're thinking about, and it may not. We'll see. But let's get that update on that package shortly. Jack.
Yeah, Jack Muladana, I wanted to just comment that on 1263, you've got several bullet points. The bill does several other things as well that were not included. One of the things I wanted to mention that what the bill does is has some legislative intent language that the legislature is saying that they'd like to see the continuation of the BAR Advisory Committee to continue over on quarterly basis. So that's an important provision. I know that Johan Gallo, Cal ABC, he was originally involved in the executive order with Governor Wilson, and this is something that now we can codify into statute. I know it's legislative intent language, but I think it's important for everyone to know that it's in this bill, and it's why we're here today, the continuation of the BAR Advisory Committee. So I wanted to point that out. Thank you.
I'm glad you did as well, because at the time of print for this presentation, those amendments, that and a couple of other industry-backed amendments had not made it their way into the bill. And I don't have them all memorized right off the top of my head. There's that one where there's legislative intent for the Bureau of Automotive Repair to continue working through an advisory body such as the Bar Advisory Group that's meeting here today. There was a provision to allow the Bureau to require that in addition to an automotive repair dealer who might be cited under new regulations that were just adopted and took effect on July 1, to require that an employee of that automotive repair dealer also attend remedial training in order to allow the automotive repair dealer to prevent disclosure of that citation on the Bureau's website. So that was a provision that was included in the bill after print of this presentation on the Senate side and the committee that heard the bill. And then one other provision, I'm missing it. It'll come to me in a minute. I sent it to both of you, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. And when it comes to me, I'll share it with all. Mr. Gallo.
Good morning. John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition. I want to follow up comments Jack Muladanoff made and also the chief. You know, it's AB 1263 is such a large bill for the sunset review. There's so many components to it, and I do sincerely appreciate the Bureau of Automotive Repair and Chief DeRay working with Cal ABC, with Jack Muladanoff and all of us to really memorialize the importance of the advisory. And, you know, this started with an executive order in '98 that was only supposed to go for 2 years. Every chief except one since then has seen the value of these quarterly meetings that we have, the amount of information we share, the things that we do to fix the marketplace. So I do sincerely appreciate the chief's efforts to help us with this bill and the rest of the staff, and we're looking forward to the governor signing it in September. Thank you.
Nikki Ayers.
Hi, Nikki Ayers, Cal ABC. I just want to follow up on a comment from Gary Conover. I'm wondering if on the salvage vehicle purchaser after the initial sale, you know, when a vehicle is salvaged, it stays on the title forever. Is that going to mean every time they're going to have to get a brake and lamp, or I'm sorry, a vehicle inspection?
No, I think it's just for the initial inspection of that vehicle to register, to clean.
Yeah. DMV, so is that going to, we have to make sure.
We'll have to work out those details with DMV, and we have been entering discussions with them about the new program
Okay, thank you.
as we finalize the regulations. I just remembered the other provision that was added to the bill after the publication of our presentation and posting of it on our website for today's meeting. The bill includes references to the vehicle code and civil code in authorizing the Bureau to develop regulations relating to storage fees and rates that are charged by automotive repair dealers. And added to that is now the insurance code and any regulations adopted by the California Department of Insurance in response to authority it has under the insurance code. That was something that was added to the bill as well. Yes, Mr. Gallo, sorry.
That's all right. No, just to follow up on Nikki's comment, because I think it is important when we look at these salvage vehicles, especially when we dealt with all of the flood vehicles after Katrina and all of that, because so many states, people figured out how to wash the title by registering that vehicle multiple times, and ultimately the salvage title on that vehicle disappeared and it looked like it was a regular vehicle, never been salvaged. And I think that's an important consideration when we're talking about these salvage vehicles that are going to be put together and put back on the road, that the DMV work with BAR and the legislature to ensure that once that vehicle is classified as a salvage vehicle, it can never be removed from the registration and the title of that vehicle. Because that's what was happening in Arizona, it was happening in Texas. All these Katrina vehicles were being shipped there because they could easily re-register it, wash the title, and then bring those vehicles into California as if they were never flood damaged vehicles. And so I think that's an important component to remember.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo. Any other comments on the legislation? Mr. Conover.
Well, it seems like Pandora's box was opened. So I understand the need for the salvage reference, but there seems to be a collision between the reference to salvage and a clear title based on a safety inspection program. Are we thinking through and clearly about the consumer's attitude in reference to seeing both on what the title may say, and do we know what the title will say? I heard you, Pat, say you're going to be working with the DMV to reference that. And there again, should we be talking about this during the regulation portion presentation?
We can do both. Since the Pandora's box, as you said, is already open. I don't have an immediate answer to the question. I'll have to consult with the team, and obviously we'll be having ongoing discussions with the DMV on this. And our regulations expert on this, Matt Gibson, I know is here in the room, but there he is. A waiver. He's hiding behind the pillar for me again. It seems to be a popular spot for some of the bar staff. Huh? Anyway, yeah, we'll talk to Matt and others who are working on this regulations package and DMV as well. Other comments?
No, I there again, Gary Conover with CAWA. My interest is if during our regulation discussion we find that the reference to salvage confuses the consumer, is there another term that should be used graduating to the safety inspection program? Do you see what I mean? So I understand what everybody else is saying, but the consumer is the one that should be in charge here of feeling comfortable with the car. That was my comment.
I get that from a personal standpoint as well. I've shared the story many times that my interest in this area started when my now 24-year-old son, I was looking when he was 16, 17, and just starting out, and we needed another vehicle in the family. I was looking for something affordable, went online to some of the platforms that are available to market all sorts of things, including vehicles, and I see the note salvage title on it, and then a little tagline, a little small print saying minor damage. And it's like, well, what's involved there? And that was always almost every vehicle I looked at. I didn't see any, and then I backed away, and then we had to find another vehicle because I got cold feet, shall we say, and I didn't really understand. And I think your point, what does this mean? What does this entail with this term salvage title? So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are much more familiar with it than I was at the time. Obviously, since then I've become much more familiar with the term and more knowledgeable about it and what it entails. But I take that point seriously because of my own personal experience. Okay, let's go to regulations. Yes. Yeah, let's do that. I didn't do that, and I'm sorry for that. Let's allow for a few comments from the public. Mr. Bud Rice. And if we've got any comments through the webcast, through the email address that I provided at the outset of the meeting, let me know. Okay.
Thank you, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up. I did have a comment about AB 1263. I think it was on the first slide. I keep trying to get around this, and I thought I would just bring it up for general comment here. But the one where it says amend the definition of automotive repair dealer to include these other types. The generally accepted understanding of what an ARD is somebody who fixes cars to the public for money. That's what everybody expects who an ARD is. In this case, you have somebody that isn't that, and you're trying to put them into this mold. And I'm wondering if there isn't some other designation, kind of similar to what Gary was talking about, some kind of a different designation, because they're really either an affiliate, a referral, an associate. There's something else, but they're not, generally speaking, somebody who fixes cars with the public for money. And so I think if there was some way to determine what those guys are really, and then maybe have some rules and regulation that goes along with that means. In other words, if I'm doing a referral to somebody and then they go to that ARD for repairs and something good happens or something bad happens and somebody's looking to me for some kind of backup, great. Let's talk about what my role should be in that. But I'm not taking batteries from people and having to do that. I'm not doing hazardous waste and trying to figure out how to do that. I'm doing some kind of a referral service, even though it's for money, but there's people that sell warranty service packages that you see on TV. Are those guys all ARD guys now, all of a sudden? So I think we ought to try our best to keep ARDs clean as to what they are, and these other things are ancillary services that may be connected, but that role is different than what the accepted standard is for somebody who fixes cars with the public for money. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
I appreciate the comment. It's a good one. And maybe Mr. Gallo has a response to it. I was thinking of one myself, but I'll defer to you, Mr. Gallo.
Well, I'm on short schedule here, so. No, and Bud's got a very good point, because even to Gary's point on the salvage vehicle thing, to get to the point is, maybe what we need to consider is this ancillary business that keeps popping up, that becomes this concierge service where you, the public, go to, they take your vehicle, they take it to a repair shop, they get the work done, and they give you a bill. To Bud's point, they didn't fix your car, the repair shop did. Maybe what we need to consider is we have ARDs, automotive repair dealers, and we have ARBs, okay? Automotive repair brokers for repair. And so now we're not convoluting what an ARD is versus an ARB, and we're looking at a broker that is acting as a third-party administrator for getting your car fixed. That's the one point. Gary's point, I agree what he's saying, is, at some point in time, does that scarlet letter need to be on that title for life? I feel it should, but maybe it shouldn't say salvaged. Maybe what it should say is a reconstructed vehicle. Because that's really what you're doing. You're taking bits and pieces. I guess you could call it Frankenstein, because some of those things that are on the road today might as well be. But maybe what we look at is reconstructed vehicles. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Other comments, questions? Nothing through the webcast, email address. Again, a reminder to those listening in on the webcast, if you have a Question or comments, you can email us at Zachary, Z-A-C-H-A-R-Y .richardson@dca.ca.gov. All right, let's go to the regulations portion of the presentation.
Thank you. All right, so far we've had 2 regulation packages adopted this year. The automotive repair dealer registration application requirements and the citation and remedial training programs for ARDs. And these are both 2 of our 3 AB 471 bills. Both of these became effective July 1st. And the ARD registration application requirements, that defines nationally recognized and industry accepted educational certifications. It establishes a process for the Bureau to review and approve educational certifications and recognizes those certifications on the ARD application. And it requires the applicants to provide an email address.
So our second package that has been adopted and became effective July 1st was the citation and remedial training programs for ARDs. So with the adoption of these regulation, ARD violations of the Automotive Repair Act will now be encompassed within BAR's citation program. These regulations also outline the process for an ARD to contest a citation and request a review by a 3-member panel. It also establishes a process for ARDs to prevent minor citations from being posted on BAR's website by attending remedial training. And lastly, it sets the process for certifying remedial training providers. So we have 4 pending regulation packages. The first being the smog check inspection equipment and station requirements, otherwise known as our DAD specification updates. Second pending package is our Consumer Assistant Program incentive increases. The third one is the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Program. That is another AB 471 regulation package. And then lastly, we have the ARD registration renewal requirements, which is also an AB 471 bill.
All right, the DAD specification package, which most of you are familiar with, this replaces the current OBD DAD specification with a more comprehensive and updated version and allows the DAD to communicate with new vehicles that use a communication protocol that is not supported by the current generation of DADs. This package, we are still working with DCA Legal to prepare it for approval by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. And we are making progress with this package. The next one is the Consumer Assistance Program incentive increases, and this is new to the BAG members. This package would increase the Vehicle Retirement Program incentives and Repair Assistance Program contributions, as well as allow the Bureau to increase those amounts every 3 years, so long that there has been a 10% increase in the Consumer Price Index. This package also removes eligibility restriction that prevents motorists from participating in the Repair Assistance Program more than once, and it lists the application requirements in regulation rather than incorporating that application. This package, we are working with DCA Legal to prepare it for agency and to begin the official public comment period.
Okay, so as you guys are definitely aware of, we are working on the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Package. As you know, this does create an inspection manual, which will establish procedures and program requirements. This package also creates license requirements for both stations and technicians. And then the package will also outline the sunset of the brake and lamp programs for being 6 months after the regulatory adoption. So we've had 3 public workshops spanning from last year to this year. We are working with DCA Legal to prepare the package for agency approval. After we get agency approval, we will enter a public commenting period. Lastly is our ARD registration renewal requirements. So this regulation package requires ARDs to use forms prescribed by the Bureau to renew their registration. It does specify that ARD registration expires 1 year from the last day of the month unless all renewal information is provided. And the package specifies that any additional required information pursuant to AB 471 be provided on the renewal. There has been an update since the publication of this. We did get agency approval, and we will be entering a 45-day public comment period soon. And that concludes our presentation.
So any comments on any of the regulation packages, including additional comments on the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Program regulations, which we've held several workshops on, but I know it was tied to the Sunset Bill. There were some comments. Mr. Conover again.
Gary Conover, CAWA. I note that AB 471 regulations have to be adopted by January 1, 2024, and you're working with AOL. Can you give us an idea of how smoothly that's going and anticipation?
Well, right now, we haven't gotten to, well, it's not AOL, OAL. I get the acronyms. Some people get those twisted, including myself. OAL is Office of Administrative Law. We haven't gotten to that point just yet. We are still in-house working with our department's legal counsel. Did get an update from the legal counsel working on this. They hope to have their review of the entire package, the regulation text, and the the Vehicle Safety Systems Inspection Manual. That have already been reviewed and approved. We're having right now other documents that support that regulation package reviewed, and that should be completed, I'm told, next week. That's the expectation. With an additional review at that'll, I'm assured, will go fairly quickly by another legal counsel who is going to be taking a look at these because of the complexity of this package, and the fact that the legal counsel assigned to it currently is pretty new to the department. So that should get over to agency. I'm hoping by the end of this month, and then they'll have approximately 30 days. I'm based on other regulation packages that we've had go through this process, and then we'll go to OEL. So let's target somewhere around the early part of September, first part of September, I'm guessing, to get to OEL and begin that 45-day public comment period. That's keeping my fingers crossed because we are under a time crunch to get this adopted by the legislature and meet the legislative mandate to have the regulations adopted. On the back end of that 45-day public comment period so if let's just pick September 1 that we get to OAL and begin that 45-day public comment period, and that's going to be optimistic and aggressive, to say the least. But that's just an easy starting point for me. That would take us to mid-October. And at that point, if there are no comments and we don't have to we're not making any further changes to the regulation package based on those comments, which you all know because you weigh in on packages, and that's fine and that's good because we get a lot of great changes and improvements to a regulation package that no one thought of at the time when we were first drafting them, even after going through several workshops, public workshops with all of you. That can take us another 15 days, and sometimes you have to renotice a second 15 days because there's another change or two. That will slow the package down, but those are things that we I won't say we don't hope happen, because when they happen, it's for good reason and good cause to make those changes. So once all of those public comments are received and there are no further changes to the package, we have a bunch of paperwork that's required of us to show our responses to OAL on the back end of this package, what our responses to all those comments are. That's in a final statement of reasons on the need to adopt this regulation package. And then OAL has, on the back end of that whole process, another 30 days to review it. So it's tight. The window for getting this done is closing each and every day. It's getting, we keep hoping we get this package over to OAL so we can get this package adopted. I don't know what happens when we miss, if that were to be the case, that deadline were to be missed. I don't like missing deadlines. Everyone who works at the Bureau of Automotive Repair knows that's one of my things. But some of the things are outside of our control. But we'll do our best to meet that deadline and get these adopted by that date of January 1. That doesn't necessarily mean, I'll put an asterisk or a caveat to that comment. Adoption doesn't necessarily, and it is not necessarily synonymous with effective. The way the regulations work is an adoption, usually the effective date takes another quarter before they take effect, a package that's adopted. There are some exceptions to that, but that's generally the rule. So it could take effect if it were adopted on the last day of the year before the January 1 date. They would not take effect until April 1 of 2024. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, Gary, because we are interested and motivated to meet that date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Great presentation. Wow, that's probably the longest we've ever had you up here. There were a lot of questions, comments, good ones.
Good job.
All right, let's go to our next presentation. Linda Jansen, as I'd already noted, is unavailable today, but standing in for her will be Clay Leak from the Executive Office at the Bureau, as well as Vince Soma, who is our program manager under which licensing operations fall under. Welcome to you both. Oh, and I wanted to say, really exciting is that we have a demonstration on the back end of this presentation on some really exciting opportunities, we think, as a result of some news that we had heard about from the department relating to print services that are under contract to the Department of Consumer Affairs. So take it away. Thank you both for being here and standing in for Linda today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vince Soma. I'm the licensing branch manager at the Bureau of Automotive Repair. You have to do it yourself. Yep. Is that better? All right. You're right here. We'll call you on it. So as some of you all have noticed, we've had some delays in licenses being received by applicants and licensees that are renewing. And we're here to talk about some of those, the reasons for those and what the Bureau intends to do about remedying those issues. So a little background on the printing that we do. All of our printing for licenses, renewal notices, delinquency notices, and whatnot are done through two separate vendors, the bulk of which is done through KP. KP prints everything with the exception of the smog check inspector and repair technician licenses and badges. So all the renewal notices come out from KP, all the business licenses come out from KP. And as I said, the exception being a smog check inspector and repair technician licenses and badges, and those come from PSI, which is also the exam vendor for those two license types. I will note that there's a typo on this one, that third bullet down, where it says KP does the repair technician and inspector licenses is inaccurate. It's just the renewal notices, delinquency notices, and underpays for those. So the business problem. Again, we've seen some significant delays in folks receiving their licenses. As reported by some licensees, it's taking upwards of 6 months to get an initial license and badge from the personal license vendor, PSI. And then KP has recently experienced several security issues which took them down and prevented printing of licenses for, I believe, about a month and a half in totality. They are getting caught back up, or they may actually be caught up at this point, but again, there's still a lag in folks receiving licenses. And so DCA has encouraged all of its boards and bureaus that use these print vendors to potentially to explore opportunities to move away from or to find a better way of providing licenses to folks. So this gave us an opportunity to kind of analyze what we're doing.
That person that have the webcast, and the volume is this much because you are.
The first time I've been accused of being soft-spoken. No, it's all right.
There you go.
Yeah, I can hear my echo now, so we should be good. So again, these issues we've been experiencing with our print vendors has given us the opportunity to kind of look at our business processes, look at the needs of the industry, and see how we might be able to make things a little bit better. And so we've examined whether or not all the print jobs are necessary. Obviously, the licenses are necessary, especially for some of the folks that have to scan them in. So we want to remove our dependence on the external vendors and improve our service levels, get people their licenses faster and possibly in an easier format. We want to reduce the overall cost of printing and mailing licenses. We're looking at, and Clay will touch on later, providing a self-service printing option for licensees that you can access through maybe a web portal and print your own licenses. That'll help a lot as far as delivering licenses timely to folks, as well as kind of removing the necessity to request a duplicate license if you lose it, because you'll just be able to go and do that yourself. And then we want to look at leveraging email, which is now a requirement on the ARD application. It is also included on all of our other applications. So we'd like to start using that technology to start communicating with licensees more and to get them their documents. So because we have seen some delays in folks getting their licenses, we've got a couple of workarounds right now that folks can use. They can print a verification of their license status from the DCA license search feature. ARDs and smog check stations can go and get their credentials to set up their analyzers and whatnot from the field offices. And then smog check inspectors who haven't gotten their badge yet can also go to a field office and get a temporary code to be able to enter the analyzers. They just need to bring their exam results. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Clay, who's going to do a brief overview of something we've been working on to get licenses to people faster.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, you know, for me, the kind of the business problem, going back to the business problem, historically, both of these vendors have had periods of time where they get significantly behind, right? And that causes licensees to not get their licenses in a timely format. For some professions, that's not a big deal, but for this industry, that is a big deal because those wall licenses are needed, for example, to register an OIS. Right, that badge is very useful to perform an inspection because you scan yourself in and authenticate yourself using the badge, right? So this interruption of service and these security issues really kind of was an opportunity for us to take a step back and really look at the whole printing overall and look at how we can do it better, how we can make it easier, how we can deliver that service more efficiently. So first and foremost, the goal was to kind of take over some of those services and start printing in-house as opposed to relying on a third-party vendor, right? So we can control those service levels and get those licenses out quicker. As we started doing that, we realized there was probably some other opportunities to allow applicants and licensees to just print their own wall license, right? What's the majesty behind our piece of paper versus a piece of paper that's somewhere else, right? The reality is there's not. And historically, these embossed wall licenses were kind of the standard for proof of licensure. Well, the reality is that's done online now, right? You verify a license online. That piece of paper really doesn't have a ton of meaning in today's world. It's our thinking anyways. So in addition to us kind of taking the responsibility to mail these licenses, we'll make that transition soon. We've got some staffing issues and some other kind of business process things to work out. This portal will be available on our website soon and will allow a licensee to print an individual wall license or a station wall license on their own. So Zach here is going to kind of drive. We'll start with the business license workflow. And again, this is not available quite yet. We've still got a few details to work out, but we wanted to take the opportunity to kind of show everybody this while we were here at BAG today. So go ahead, and we are in a test environment here. This is not production. So I'll have Zach type in our test license number, an address, and the city. The address and the city, it's a fuzzy logic, so it doesn't have to be a perfect match. It just has to be somewhat close. That will allow the business owner to go ahead and pop open that PDF, which will include the letter that we will be sending out, notifying them that their license was approved, and also, as you scroll down, the associated wall license. The wall license looks a little bit different. We've made a couple changes. One of the changes we've made is that QR code to the right. That QR code will allow a consumer to scan that wall license, and it will take that consumer directly to the DCA search site, and it will allow the consumer to verify that that business, the name on the wall of this business, matches this license, and that license is in active status. It will also allow them to see if any disciplinary action is associated with this business. So this is the ARD. If you continue to scroll down, I believe there's a couple more. This business is also a brake adjust station. Also a lamp adjusting station. And so on and so forth. Every license associated to this business will be able to be printed. And there's still, again, a few details we're working through and some testing that needs to be done before we get this out into production, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to what it looked like in prod. Any questions on the business one? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just, we see it in the news every day, all the mail theft and everything that's going on. And now you're dealing with print contractors that can't deliver on printing material. I think what you're doing is great. I really hope that BAR moves to this format for everything, because the majority of the times the delays and the complaints that we get is we're waiting for our ARD. The rent is running, the clock is ticking, and the money is being spent, and we're waiting on a piece of paper. And so if you can do this for all licenses moving forward, I think it'd be a great step for BAR.
Yeah, this will be all licenses. Ultimately, I've got a presentation coming up on ELM, our enforcement and licensing modernization effort. In a perfect world, the second that license is approved, I'd be sending you an email with all of this attached, right? We're not quite there yet, so this is kind of an intermediate step to address some of the problems. But longer term, obviously, there's a pretty clear vision in terms of where we want to get and where we need to get. So this is kind of an intermediate step to something that will be ultimately much more friendly.
And this will allow people to get their licenses within days as opposed to months.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's great.
So let's walk through the individual flow, which is a little bit different. So in the case of an inspector or a technician, we have an application called CalARC, which is where they're required to go to upload their CE requirements when we renew a license. So most inspectors and technicians already have an account. If you don't have an account, it's very easy to log into CalARC and create an account. So that's why the flow is a little bit different. So go ahead, Zach, and click Inspector Technician. So in this case, there is an email and a password. If you don't have an account with CalARC, this particular, we're just going to go ahead and assume the account already exists. But if not, you would go to CalARC. There's a button when you would click Create an Account. So he's going to go ahead and log in. So the licensee, if you scroll down, has a few other options. I'll just, as a reminder, you can update your email address, change your password. There'll be a new button off to the right if you scroll back up to the top, which is print license. If you click the print license feature, again, we know all the licenses that are associated with this individual, so you'll be able to print all of them, any of them tied to this applicant. In addition to the license, you'll see we've also added the badge. So historically, a brake adjuster didn't get a badge. For the sake of simplicity, we've just allowed them to print a brake adjusting badge. There's really no purpose for that, but in the world, as we move from brake and lamp to safety, there will be a valid reason for that safety inspector. They will need a badge, right? Because they'll be logging into the bar OIS just like they would be for a smog check. So if you continue to scroll down, it's very similar to the business flow in terms of every wall license is going to have a badge and a wall license, and then tied to whatever license this individual has. And again, obviously, that inspector badge is useful for things like registering OIS, logging into the OIS, and all that stuff. So both business and individual, all of this will be available the second the license is approved. So if an applicant calls looking for a status and that license is status 10 and active, our help desk can say, go to this site and you can print your wall license, you can print everything you need to get going immediately. So hopefully a big improvement to where we've been, certainly not where we want to end up, but kind of a step in the right direction and kind of an intermediate phase to alleviate some of the pain points due to some of these outages and vendor issues.
Yeah, I just want to second John's statement. This is fantastic, and I'm just wondering when you think this is going to be live, or you have any estimate.
Can we have it yesterday?
Soon. I can't commit to a date just because this is fresh off the press. I mean, this is literally a prototype we've been working on for a week and a half. A few security issues we just need to nail down and some testing and validation, but within the next few weeks, I'm hopeful, certainly not more than a month.
Yeah.
And we'll have some outreach, and we'll make sure everyone's aware when this goes out, and we'll make sure we ET blasts, news articles, all the regular stuff in terms of how we publish the availability of this service.
I'd love to piggyback off that. Once you're sending out alerts, we can send out alerts to our members.
That's great.
To raise awareness of it. This is fantastic.
This is huge.
It's a win for us too. Ultimately, like Vince mentions, it's a cost savings. I mean, there's some staff time internally to print and mail and do all that stuff, but it will be less than what it costs to outsource this. And reduction in calls to the help desk, right? And we can really help people that are looking for that wall license because they want to get going, right? We can point them to a spot where they can easily obtain the licenses they need and get going. So it's pretty exciting. More to come.
That's great.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Anything from the audience? Anything via the webcast? Any emails? Wow. Hit a home run almost there. We're coming between third and home with the delivery of it in a few weeks, but this is great.
Yeah, I did want to recognize the team too. A lot of folks at BAR really took it upon themselves to find a better way to do this when we saw the issues that our licensees were experiencing kind of out of our control. So the team's done a great job, and everyone, enforcement, licensing, technology services branch, everybody pitched in on this and has really done a great job. So thanks to the team.
Yeah, awesome. Great job. Thanks, Vince. Thanks, Clay.
Pretty cool.
All right. As previously noted, our next presentation is being moved to October due to Ms. Dubois-Carey's unavailability today. So we'll jump right ahead to a presentation from the Clean Cities program from Gina O'Neill with Sacramento Clean Cities Coalition. And you have someone with you. Thank you for both of you being here.
Good morning. My name is Gina O'Neill. Thank you so much. This is our brand new executive assistant to Clean Cities, our first full-time employee. So I thought since Tim is not here, we'll let him sit here with us, see what this is all about. His name is Lamont Davis. It's a pleasure to have him.
Nice to have you both here.
Okay, so again, my name is Gina O'Neill. I wear two hats. I'm a co-director with Mr. Tim Taylor at Sacramento Clean Cities Coalition. We'll see on one of the next slides how many of our coalitions there are in the United States. And I'm also an air quality analyst at Sac Metro Air District. And so the Air District has lots of funds, and Clean Cities has a lot of needs, so it's a really nice marriage. Okay, so here's the slide in which what we do at Clean Cities. It spans across the entire United States. I think there are 14 Clean Cities coalitions here in California. We focused on fleet education, workforce development, which is partly why I'm here today, is to ask for help with workforce development, evaluate transportation needs, so we can go into a business or an organization, see what their fleet is, have them tell us what they want, and then we kind of show them how to bridge that gap and get there. We talk about decarbonizing transportation sectors by shifting the vehicles and the fuels and the technologies that reduce transportation greenhouse gas emissions. We do advanced environmental justice. Our priorities are maximizing project benefits that flow into underserved communities, which I'm sure most of you know tend to be Black and brown communities. And we also promote higher MPG vehicles and, of course, reducing idling. So some of the fuels that we talk about within our coalition happen to be biodiesel, obviously electricity, ethanol, hydrogen, natural gas, and propane. Now, a few notes about this graphic is that renewable diesel and renewable propane, respectively, have a relatively low carbon intensity, even compared to the California grid, based on this graphic. And this does result in lower carbon emissions, so we do support it. Renewable gasoline is a little bit higher, but still better based on this graphic than the California grid. Now, I don't want to say that the California grid and the fact that we're all promoting EVs is a bad thing, but what I find really interesting is that we have to go ZEV by 2035, but this does suggest that our grid is relying on some sort of fossil fuel or higher carbon source, and so that's something we need to pay attention to. Now, renewable natural gas has the lowest carbon intensity with negative emissions, which can occur if fuel production process captures and sequesters more CO2 than is released when using the vehicle. Okay, any questions on that? I kind of dove right in there on this graphic. Okay, so these are the alternative fuels that we support in whole. So these are just the events that Clean Cities has done this year, and some of these, if you, I'm sure you've noticed, are X'd out. That's because they're events that are coming up that we haven't exactly picked the date for yet. But we range anywhere from doing equitable projects with underserved communities to working with, we've had a few events at UTI. I'm sorry that they couldn't be here today. We highlight stakeholders who are basically vendors, OEMs, manufacturers, fleets, county, city. We do Earth Day events. We recently did a coast-to-coast TV event at the California Auto Museum. We were there for the Pepsi launch with their, I believe, Class 6 heavy-duty vehicles. We also do grant writing and pretty much the entire 360-degree approach to how do you get from fossil fuels and what that transition looks like into getting to zero or near zero emission fleets. So the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulation, I feel like I skipped a slide. This might be out of order. Let's see. Let's do this one first. Okay. So the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulation. This represents a crucial step in addressing challenges posed by climate change and air pollution. And a lot of us are pretty grumpy about it. At least that's what I've heard. However, it does have two compliance paths and is important. And one is for state and local government agencies, 50% of all the vehicles acquired over 8,500 pounds must be ZEV beginning in 2024. And then 100% of all vehicles acquired over 8,500 pounds must be ZEV beginning in 2027. So even though we keep hearing that everything's got to be ZEV by 2035, these impacts are happening now. And our job is to help those organizations, again, get from fossil fuels to zero emission, and we do everything in between. So let's see, even though, yep, okay, I got that. And then, of course, the most important thing is that not every single organization is going to have the most, have the same issues. So we really want to pay attention to a case-by-case basis and make sure that we can meet the fleet's unique requirements because everybody's different. Okay, now let's go back to this one. Here we go. Okay, so OEMs that sell more than 4,500 light and medium-duty vehicles per year must comply with the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation on OEMs. Smaller volume OEMs are exempt until 2035 when the state's 100% ZEV mandate comes into effect. And so this is just a proposed, projected percentage of new ZEVs and plug-in electric vehicle sales. So we think by 2026, 35% of all vehicles that are sold that are light duty and medium duty will in fact be on the road. All right, now the real reason why I'm here. All right, so we at Clean Cities are really having a hard time trying to find OEMs and fleets that would be willing to help us train EV techs. It's a real challenge. We have done some training, but we would really like to build a more robust training program, and we are super interested in anyone that may have access to a resource. We have done training at American River College. We'll do any community college. We've done it at California Mobility Center. And some of the items that we would and have trained on are listed here. So one of our phenomenal partners, Ms. Angelina Rahimi with Aura Planning, she has actually created a pretty cool VR program that you put on these goggles and you hold this little, what do you call it? Little controllers, and you actually get to work on a car or work on a charging station. And it's this amazing way to think that you're actually in a room with the car above you, and it tells you what to do, what to check. It's super safe. You're not going to get electrocuted or get hurt. And it's something that we would like to include in our future training. And she was going to be here today, but she was not able to make it. Okay, so here's an example of some of the tours that we've actually done this year. We went to this mud maintenance courtyard. This was a cohort through Community Resource Project where we had 20 women who we trained to work on chargers, as well as basically introduce them to what it would look like as a career, as also vehicles maintenance. And then, of course, we had a group of Afghan refugees, another group of 20 that we took to the SMUDS Power Academy. And then my favorite, just because I love working with the young people, we took a group of young people to American River College to their auto tech program. So our goal is just to expose up-and-comers who are trying to figure out what they want to do for a career. We'd very much like to get them trained in this up-and-coming career, and we could use some help in doing so. And these pictures are the lunch that Tim had with the hat on there with the Afghan refugees, where they expressed their desire to work and their interest in everything EV. So I heard from Zachary when I was talking to him through BAR that there was an interest in the disadvantaged community equity projects that we work with. And since I also work at the district, what Clean Cities does is we assist people who may be looking for an EV, but maybe they can't afford a new one. We can help them get into a used one. The Air District has a program called Clean Cars for All. It's been in effect for a few years now. We've got over 30 dealers that we sign up with, and when a person applies through our program, they can qualify for up to $9,500 to purchase or lease a new or used electric plug-in vehicle or even a hydrogen vehicle. And so Clean Cities goes into these underserved communities and tells the members about this program. And the first thing they always say to me is, I can't afford it. And I'm like, no, let's take a peek at some of the examples. And we've had some of our community members be able to actually walk out the door for $9,500 for a 3-year-old car that just came off a lease that has under 25,000 miles on it, which is pretty remarkable. And so we really focus on making sure that they are not left behind. Okay, this slide is interesting. Tim was supposed to be here to be the one to talk about this, so I texted him this morning and said, what the heck is this slide about? And here's what we figured out. At some point, we are going to have a day of reckoning. When we all go electric by 2035, we're not certain that the grid is going to be able to hold it. Now, I'm not suggesting it won't. I'm just saying we're not sure. And so what we want to do is make sure that everybody is able to take advantage of the incentives that are here right now. We have several $millions at the Sac Metro Air District that I basically had to go out and beg people to apply. And I'm thinking, you must just not all know about it. And so I'm out at every event I can go to begging people to apply. I have money. I don't know if they don't believe me, but we are getting about $60 million out the door that we've got committed as of today to build infrastructure, 70% of which is going to be in underserved communities, as well as funding vehicles. We have an inspection going on at this very moment at the Del Paso Heights Mobility Hub in Del Paso Heights for an electric shuttle bus that we were able to supplement the payment for that, which Green Technical Education and Employment got for $120,000. It's got under 6,000 miles on it, and it will hold up to 16 students, which 45% of the trips that they provide are actually getting kids to school. I had no idea that was even an issue. And so working through Clean Cities, going out into the community, we find that there are so many needs that we are not aware of. When my kids went to school, they took the bus. Well, that's not always available now. And now that we can actually get kids to school in electric shuttle buses with a wheelchair lift, I might add, and I actually even picture getting a bunch of seniors to the casino. I don't know, but at least it's zero emission. Okay, so here were Tim's questions for the dealers. And now, basically what we want is we want help getting community members in for training. We have money at Sacramento Clean Cities. We were just awarded several grants. We have money. We will pay you to train people. We will even set up the agenda. We will even be there. We just need a place to be able to do it. In addition to that, we have the Clean Cars for All program. And you know what our biggest issue is when we award someone $9,500, they come back 30 days later and say, I can't find a car to buy. And I cannot figure out for the life of me why all the dealers that we've signed up are not bringing in as many electric vehicles as possible. I still am not exactly sure why. And my son is a salesperson at Kia in Roseville, and I still can't figure out why. I'm assuming it must have something to do with they don't make much money on it. But any OEM, any dealer that would be willing to bring in extra zero or low emission vehicles that can be plugged in, we would be delighted to send customers their way. So some of the questions that we have is, can we establish a mechanism for streamlining the acquisition of new and used EVs and plug-in electric vehicles for the Clean Cars for All program? And are there any shops interested in apprenticeship or intern program if stipends are provided for not only the interns, but also the dealership for setting aside the time to train the interns. And are dealerships and customers comfortable with the fact that combustion in vehicles, dealerships, repair facilities are being eliminated by regulation? We have found that a lot of times we've drank the, I'm not going to say it, a lot of times we really live and breathe zero emission infrastructure vehicles, EVSEs. But we never really talk about, it's very difficult to go from diesel to zero emission. We've got to talk more about the transition between the two. And so we're interested in what people's opinions are so that we can accomplish the case-by-case basis and help those fleets be able to transition into meeting all these regulations. And our dealership's aware of the costs associated with the upfits to buildings, parking areas, repair facilities that will be necessary. One of the items I forgot to mention is that when you go to add a charger to your parking lot, that it's really important to think about also electrifying your building and not just putting in one switchgear and one charger in your parking lot. Let's make sure that we work together, and we don't charge anything to assist you in making a plan to electrify your building and your parking lot. We can also do a sustainability analysis to figure out how much electricity you may need, as well as help you apply for incentives. I think that's it for that one. And what do we have next? I think that may be it. Oh, that's it. Okay. Are there any questions?
Gina, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today. And at the Bureau's sunset hearing back in March, we were asked some questions, or I personally was asked some questions by at least one legislator relating to the Bureau's work in focus on some advanced vehicle technologies, and especially in disadvantaged or underserved, I think was the phrase you used, but I think the hearing was disadvantaged communities, and didn't have a lot to add or say. But I had heard this presentation at the California Automotive Business Coalition meeting in January, where I was also asked to speak, and I met Tim, and I was just swirling in the back of my mind. First of all, I was truly fascinated by the presentation, but when a couple months later down the road, when I was asked some questions relating to this at the sunset hearing for the Bureau of Automotive Repair, I said, I've got to bring you to our advisory group meeting as soon as possible, in conjunction with another presentation that I had heard that, I think that same day, from Tess Dubois Carey, who you've partnered with in some ways at the Universal Technical Institute, or UTI as we commonly refer them to. So thank you so much for being here, because it is really fascinating work that you're doing, and I wanted to get the word out and bridge that.
Appreciate
and see
it.
how we might be able to partner in some ways with you.
Yeah, we need access to training facilities.
Yep. Mr. Gallo.
Well, on that subject, I had the pleasure of attending the last beam to be installed at San Bernardino Valley College. It's a college I went to. It's a college we've been fighting for over 20 years through Cal ABC, through Bridgestone Firestone, to keep their automotive shop open. Thanks to Senator Leyva, Assemblymember Reyes, they got a $350 million grant for a new facility, which ties right in with what your subject is. And part of the lab is going to be electric vehicles. And part of that lab just got a $10,000 grant from Amazon to work on their electric vehicles to further the purpose of having electric fleets. So you may want to reach out to San Bernardino Valley College in San Bernardino because they would love to have you, because they're looking to open this brand new $350 million career technical education center the first of next year. Second part of that is I spent the last 6 months working with a name that's familiar to some of the people in the room, Rocky Carlisle, who has worked with the EDD and the Department of Ed on what are we going to do and how are we going to get the high school and community colleges ready to work on electric vehicles to supplement not only the work that Tess and UTI and the other schools do. American River College, very familiar with the staff there. And so all of these things really tie into what you're trying to do right now. So you do have a partner in us and all the other people. We've been only fighting to keep career technical education programs open for the last 30-plus years. But I think the critical component in all of that goes back to an earlier comment you made. Is the grid going to be ready? And the majority of people I talk to say we're not ready. And so there's a lot that's going to have to be done in the infrastructures. When you're talking to a contractor that put all the Tesla charging stations at the bottom of the grapevine, and they tell me they can only have 1 and 3 running at all times because otherwise it would crash the Southern California grid, Houston, we have a problem. Okay.
That's right.
So with that, we do support your efforts. We appreciated Tim coming out at UTI and his presentation and all the work that Tess is doing with UTI and their staff. But we have a lot of work to do. And so with that, I hope I've given you some additional resources. I'll get you the contact information. And so that you can help work with them because they're excited about the new facility.
That's amazing.
Their last upgrade for that facility was 1966.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Other questions, comments? Yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna hop in representing Tess in UTI. So nice to hear her name, just to give you an update on kind of what we got going on. So my role is the Director of Career and Student Services. I oversee our academic implementation for our student population and work as a liaison between students and our employers. So we hear from our employers all the time that EVs is a huge need. So in recognition of that, we've taken employer feedback and reworked our curriculum. And the Sacramento campus has been piloting and has been the first to offer our new EV program. So any currently enrolled student will be getting that EV course. It's going to begin being taught in January of next year. So next year, you'll start to see those students come out with those advanced training in EV vehicles. And this is also, I think, relevant to the current technician workforce. Any student who has graduated from UTI previously can come and re-enroll and get the training in just the EV portion. So they don't have to go through the entirety of the program again, but can get that advanced training that may be necessary to meet the future employer needs. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I also don't want to diminish the fact that you can't just learn how to work on EVs and then you're good. Only 10% of all the vehicles are EVs, so we still need that valuable training, but yay.
So I represent the California New Car Dealers Association. I wanted to thank you, along with everyone else, the fantastic presentation. And I can kind of talk about a lot. I mean, the questions that you've posed here invite a lot of discussion. I'm going to just focus my comments, I think, on what we can more kind of uniquely speak on, at least with respect to this panel, on the participation on Clean Cars for All, which you specifically asked about. It's a fantastic program. As you've mentioned, I think dealer participation is mixed, and I think that there's opportunities to reduce friction points, to increase participation. I want to invite you, I'm going to try to get your contact information so we can connect, either after this meeting, I have my card, or through Pat and his team. But there's a lot of, I think, good work that we can do. And we actually recently submitted to the Air Resources Board a comment letter on how we envision a use of LCFS monies, and because there's been a suspension of the Clean Fuel Reward Program, which was funded through the LCFS program. I think there's an opportunity there to imagine a program that's more equity focused, using those resources. And there's an opportunity to think about vehicle leasing too, in conjunction with the federal funds that are available, to substantially reduce monthly payments and really supercharge these equity programs, to make vehicles affordable. Because there's there's a lot of changes that are happening, and I think a lot of positive things that we can move towards. Happy to send our comment letter to you and have a dialogue. But yeah, thank you so much. There's a lot of great stuff here, and there's, I think, we can move to a much more positive place than we've been if we continue to have these types of dialogues. So thank you so much.
Other questions, comments? Did get a couple of emails through the webcast, listeners. Tess is actually listening.
Yay.
Excellent presentation, Gina. I will reopen the conversation that was started with my home office partners at UTI around your EV training needs. Thank you, Matt,
Thank
for
you.
the comments as well. And Ruben Parra with the California Automotive Teachers. Well, I know we also have Brian Pearson representing, says, hello, Zach. Please inform the presenter that I and Kat will be in contact to discuss possible schools and presentation opportunities at CAT, California Automotive Teachers. Wow, you're getting lots of business
Wait,
today.
who was that? Give me that name again.
Be careful what you ask for, as
Oh,
they
I'm
say. But this is good.
Oh, I'm
No,
ready. I am
yeah,
ready.
this is, bring it on. All right.
Perfect. This is amazing. Ask and
Yeah.
you shall receive.
Absolutely. Additional questions, comments from the audience? Bud Rice.
Okay, I just took a photo of her thing. Okay.
Aye.
And Zach said he is sending Clean Cities contact information to all of the Bar Advisory Group members now.
Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up. Shops are not stupid, but we're slow, okay, to be quite honest with you, okay? And in some cases, we have to manage our businesses based on market conditions. So a customer might come in and say, hey, I have an electric vehicle. You guys work on electric vehicles? We go, no. And then we talk about it after they leave, and we go, hey, we had somebody come in and ask about electric vehicles. Really? Yeah. Next day, 2 people come in. Hey, you guys work on electric vehicles? Well, no. And then we talk about it at lunch again. Hey, we had 2 more people come in and talk about electric vehicles. The third day, we go, maybe we ought to start thinking about electric vehicles, okay? But it takes a while, is what I'm saying. And as the market shifts, the shops will shift. So and then in terms of what is the market's equipment in terms of charging stations and putting charging stations in place and servicing those charging stations and make sure they're going. When John Gallo was talking about, 1 in 3 at the Grapevine, it's actually worse than that. Okay, if you go to other places that might have 10 charging stations that are at a shopping mall, only 3 out of 10 are working. Yeah. They are, okay, and because the equipment hasn't kept up with what it takes to have a piece of equipment that can be up and be operational long-term. They also haven't put things in place where they keep mice out from chewing on the cables and then the cables go down. So there's all kinds of things that are going on, but that's the equipment side. And then over on the vehicle side, we have to figure out how you can get technicians trained so that they know how to fix the vehicles. Usually how the market will work is that the new car guys will get it first, okay? And we're behind them. And so as the new car dealers get inundated with inquiries about service, they do the best they can by servicing their customers, and we get the bleed off that happens because of that. That's what happens, right? And so then over time, there's a shifting of service needs by customers who some go to the dealers and then some look elsewhere. So we have to be ready to go when that time comes. And I think the new car dealer guys are still struggling with how do we ramp up and be able to supply that service needs. And that's a service need that we haven't even seen yet because we don't have the flashpoint yet. So there's some pieces in place that still have to happen. From Tessa's perspective, you can't wait, right? You can't wait. So you almost have to prefab this stuff in terms of training so that people have an opportunity to make choices based on their educational level for responding to, again, the market conditions. So you have to have trained people that can move once the market moves. But nothing can happen until the market moves. And when the market moves, then all these other things start happening. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bud.
Part of the reason why some of those chargers are not working, don't take all of them. Okay, thank you. He's all, and I'll take these cards too. Look at it. Can you give one of these to the gentleman right there, please? Is because there's nobody maintaining the chargers. That's why they're not up. And so we want to get ahead of it and not have to wait for what the market needs. And what we're offering is the ability to bring you forward and lead the charge in developing a training program. And we will hold your hand the whole way through.
Additional questions, comments? Anthony.
Well, so I just wanted to comment that charging station reliability is a mess. And there was a study, I think, last year that came out of, there was, I believe, a professor at UC Berkeley that went around and surveyed chargers in the Bay Area and found that about a third were just inoperable. And this is in the Bay Area. But there's good work that's being done at like the NEVI program, and that like at the federal level, I believe there's a 97% requirement that they're targeting in terms of operability. So there's certainly awareness on this issue. There's a ton of work to be done, and a lot. I mean, I've sat through presentations and worked with JD Power. Actually has a survey that they do on how comparable chargers or various aspects of the electric vehicle experience are to parity with ICE, internal combustion engine vehicles. There are certain aspects that are very close or even above parity in terms of a positive consumer experience. The charging infrastructure is the worst. The public charging infrastructure, and outside of the Tesla supercharger network, it's even worse than that. So there's a huge amount of work to be done. And if anything, the strong increases in that we're seeing right now, about 20% of new vehicle sales currently are electric, which is huge, that there's backsliding, because the number of vehicles that are coming on the road is not being matched by the build out of this charging infrastructure. So if anything, we're moving in the wrong direction on this. So applaud your work and the focus that you've pointed on this, but so much needs to be done because if people cannot have confidence that they can charge their vehicles, that's going to be a huge hindrance to adoption.
Mr. Gallo.
Just two quick things. One of the things that I learned through this EDD and Department of Ed study was that Harvard is working on a new battery technology that actually is not going to require all of the heavy metals and everything that are in current batteries. The good news in all that is it will have a 1,000-mile range. It will be able to charge in the same amount of time it's going to take you to fill your tank with gas. And that Harvard study is moving very fast. The other thing that's important to note, thieves are very quick to pick up on things. We talked a lot about catalytic converters. The latest hot button for thieves is your power cord to your EV vehicle. And so make sure if you have one, you keep it in a good place because they're stealing them.
Thank you for the last comments. And if there is another one, Mr. Robinette from iCar.
Sure. Dave Robinette with iCar. Just another point on that. You were talking about the need to create the awareness. Certainly on the collision repair side, there is awareness out across the nation. I visit a lot of shops. I'm in their facilities. We're talking about training as our company does. And one of the things that we're seeing an awful lot about going on in the industry is the fact that they don't have enough technicians that know how to work on the vehicles. Now, they're not necessarily working on the battery or working on the propulsion system. They're working on the collision around that, and they have to have safety. They have to have training around that. They have to have training. We've heard some tragic stories about folks that didn't realize if it's orange, you don't touch it, that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of effort going on. There's companies like Rivian and Lucid and others that are looking for shops that can do that type of repair. as a certified shop, and they're finding it difficult to find those shops. With that force out there and looking, there's more and more of that awareness among the collision repair industry, mechanic industry, that this is a need. And so that is building from the other side as well. So it's not necessarily just the awareness from the side we've been talking about, attracting people in to be trained for what we're talking about here. I'm talking about across the nation. So there's a lot of material that's available and a lot of things going on as far as training around that, both from the certified dealer perspective and then for the schools themselves that are setting up those students for collision repair and mechanical repair to bring in that. So I wanted to maybe show some encouragement that there is awareness. And yes, there's infrastructure that still needs to be built. There's no question about that. That's going to happen everywhere, not just in California, although California will lead out on that because of the mandates and just the sheer volume and size of the economy here. So that said, I think there's still hope that we'll be building on this, and I'm aware of several different programs, just like UTI and others across the United States that's doing this. So I may have to share some information with you on that point as well, so that you're aware that those programs are underway. The real question will also be, do you need technicians that are able to get right down into the middle of that propulsion system, working with those 3, 5, 900-volt batteries, or are we talking about working around them? Because a lot of folks are not going to be doing that unless we're repurposing batteries, recycling batteries. It gets to be a really big conversation. And we've just touched on just trying to charge the batteries, let alone fix them. So anyway, just wanted to note that there is quite a bit of awareness. A lot of shops are, to Bud Rice's comment about the fact that, when the market gets big enough, they'll start moving towards that. Well, that awareness is already starting to build.
No, that makes
It's gonna
good
be more and
sense.
more.
There is a lot of awareness, and the difference between what we were doing a year ago and what we're doing today is now we have money, and so we can pay for helping that awareness.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other further comments, I will close this agenda item. Thank you so much, Gina, and thank you, Mr. Davies, for being here. Look forward to the continued work and partnership with you. Thank you. All right, moving right along and keeping with the training theme. As you can see, we had the presentation from UTI, now the Clean Cities program presentation, and now a program that we're very proud of and something that came about as a result of a suggestion a few years back from the Bar Advisory Group to create a program or look at a way for diverting some of our vehicles that are slated for retirement through through our programs to see if we could get those to schools for training purposes. And here to give that presentation, an update on things and how we're progressing with this program over the last few years is Denise Cunningham with our Consumer Assistance Program. Welcome, Denise. Good morning to you.
Thank you. So good morning. Let me make sure I know how this thing works first. Yes, I do. Okay, so good morning. As Pat mentioned, I'm Denise Cunningham with the Consumer Assistance Program. And it's been about 3 years since we have discussed this program with this group, and just wanted to give an update on how things are going. As you may remember, the program provides retired CAP vehicles to publicly funded technical training institutions, training programs operated by high schools, community colleges, or regional occupational programs. And subject to availability, the schools may request various year makes, models of vehicles. They can request different other options, manual transmission, automatic transmission, different operating sources of power, diesel, gas, hybrid, and various other options. We originally started working on this program, as Pat mentioned, in 2019, based on input from this group and others. We supplied our first vehicle in January of 2020, and we got up to 12 vehicles and 12 schools by March of 2020 when COVID hit and everything kind of shut down. We began expansion again in July of 22. Currently, we have 33 community colleges, regional occupational programs, and high schools that participate. It's actually 15 high schools, 5 regional occupational programs, and 13 community colleges that currently work with us. So far, 56 vehicles have been assigned to those schools, and 5 of the assigned vehicles are hybrids. We would like to maximize those more as the orders come in. However, we're restricted by the volume that comes into our dismantlers. So we've been conducting active outreach for the since July throughout the state to try and interest schools in taking part in the program. So far, those that have elected to participate they're mostly in the San Francisco Bay areas. You can see the Central Valley and, of course, the Los Angeles / Inland Empire region of the state, with a few other schools scattered around the state. As Pat mentioned earlier, there's been some interest in whether disadvantaged communities have been receiving any benefits from this program. What we can say is that there's currently 71% of the schools participating in the program are in or near disadvantaged communities. 29% are not. And when we speak of this, we're referencing disadvantaged communities as designated by California EPA pursuant to Senate Bill 535 of 2012. And I think somebody put that up there as 2022. The slide is wrong. That statute's of 2012. The designation, Cal EPA's designation is updated periodically and is made on the basis of geographic, socioeconomic, public health, and environmental hazard criteria. Several months ago, we sent out questionnaires to instructors participating in the program to try and get an idea of what how they were using the vehicles, whether they found the programs useful, and what we might improve on the program. And they responded to us indicating that primarily they use the vehicles for lecture demonstration and student practice, with the student practice being primarily remove, replace practice and running diagnostic checks on the vehicles and so forth. The programs, there's a very, the vehicles are used in various types of classes, whether they're general repair, smog check, auto body. They have some introduction to hybrid technology classes in a couple of the high schools. They may choose the reasons that the instructors like the program. They like the fact that they may choose from a different range of vehicles. They like the fact that they don't need to worry about damaging the vehicle. Pretty much they can bring it back in a box as long as they bring it back. And they can bring back one vehicle and order another from year to year and kind of change things up as their needs change. So they seem to appreciate that. And of course, the fact that it's lower cost than some of their other options might be. They did make several requests for improvement. One of the primary requests they had was to that they need help in transporting vehicles to the schools. And I've heard stories from several instructors who have been unable to get funds from their schools to transport the vehicles. Some of them have ended up taking money out of their own pocket to go get these vehicles. So that's an issue. So some have asked for us to provide discounted towing services and more time to pick the vehicles up from when we tell them that they're ready for them. They've also requested that we provide a report prior to pickup that indicates the condition of the vehicle and why it was retired. They've asked us to provide more vehicles to each school. Currently, we're limited to 3 to 4 simply because the program, our current contracts only require dismantlers, each dismantler site to provide 10 vehicles per site. And so they want more, and they want to work on lowering the wait time for rarer vehicles. And we do get some requests for some pretty unusual vehicles that just don't often come through our program. So what we want to do is we want to take that, we're going to take those responses that we got from our surveys, and we're going to use those to help us plan for future improvement. Certainly, we're going to continue outreach, continue trying to increase the number of participating schools. We are going to explore ways to provide schools with discounted towing and transportation. There's a few options, some things we may explore with our dismantler contracts, new dismantler contracts coming up in the future. We also want to look at ways to provide schools with basic reports on the vehicle condition at the time of offer, and generally take a look at various other options. We want to invite educators and the industry to partner with us on ways to improve the program. And if anybody has any ideas, any thoughts that I think they may be able to assist on this, this is my contact information, and I think that concludes the presentation. Just want to give a chance for questions if you got any.
Denise, thank you so much for the update. Appreciate you being here. Let's see, any questions, comments? Yes, Jeff Cox.
Jeff Cox, Automotive Maintenance Repair Association. Do you have a way to get feedback from the schools on certain year makes and models that you can go and look for to ensure that there's certain technologies that maybe that they're looking for to teach, rather than have just a pool of cards for them to choose from?
Well, yeah, we actually provide the schools with a request list, and they can, basically, they tell us what they want. So it depends on the type of class that they're teaching. For instance, we have one instructor who needed old vehicles, really old vehicles, to teach a smog class so that the newer students would understand some of the old stuff that used to be around. We have had others that specifically want hybrid vehicles. others that want manual transmissions because they're teaching a manual transmission class. So we really, we give them a spreadsheet and ask them to fill it out, telling us what vehicles they want, what specifically they're looking for. So that's what we're doing. I don't know if that answered your
Yeah,
question.
it did. I in my head, I thought you had a pool of cars for them to choose from. It sounds like you're seeking out certain vehicles that they're looking for, which is great.
Correct. Yeah, they give us a list. We provide that to the dismantlers that are near to them, and they kind of wait till they come through. And unfortunately, our retirement volume has been down a little bit lately, so it takes a little bit longer to find specific vehicles, but they do come through.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions or comments for Denise? Anthony?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I know we've talked, I think, in the past about vehicle retirements and generally and trends, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but I'm wondering if our retirements are retirements through these programs continuing at a pretty low level or historically low? Because I know during the pandemic there was a decline in retirements, and it's wondering if there's been any uptick more recently, or are we kind of at a lower level still?
We are at a lower level, and it's probably more associated with the increase in used car prices than it is specifically with the pandemic. And that is one of the reasons we, as Holly mentioned earlier, we are looking at regulations to increase the incentive amount that we're providing for the retired vehicles. And that should help. I don't know if it's going to bring everybody back, but the consumer price index for used cars and trucks has gone up. It actually went up between July of 2020 and July of 21. It actually went up 40%. And it has been hovering around that area for a while. So we're looking at approximately a 30 to 40% increase in those incentive amounts. It's really going to depend. They mentioned 2013, 50, but it's going to depend on where we are, where the consumer price index is at the time we kind of finalize the regulations and get the approvals. But it's going to be somewhere in the 30 to 40% region, it looks like.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Brian Pearson.
Hi, Brian Pearson, AAA. So first, let me say thank you. Anything we can do to encourage a new generation of technicians to come into the market is awesome. The other thing is I may know people with tow trucks. So I would be happy to see if we can't connect the right people with you to see what we can do within our footprint.
I would very much appreciate that. It's going to be a couple of years before we can actually update our dismantler contracts, more than likely. So in the meantime, yeah, if there are businesses that can assist the schools and somehow we can connect the two, that would be great. So if you could contact me, I would very much appreciate the information, and we can figure out a way to get that info out to the schools that need it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. And I appreciate it because I also assigned you to representing California automotive teachers, and my mistake on earlier in the meeting. So thank you for jumping in there. We would love to partner with you and connect the schools. That'd be fantastic if we can arrange something there. Yes, Mr. Kusa.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, so Dave Kusa with ASCCA. So one of the other hats I wear is president of our association's foundation that we get donations through our shops in our association. So I'll email you with some information, and perhaps we can come up with a plan that maybe the foundation can help in this respect with with some of the donated cars that just they go for auction, which results in a tax deduction for the vehicle owner. But maybe there's a way we can satisfy both. So I'll send you an email and see what we can do. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else from the audience? The webcast? Oh, yes, Bud Rice. I actually think it was your idea that created this, so I'm
Sorry, I have to say something.
I'm
right?
just now remembering.
I have to say something.
Yep.
Following up on what Johan Gallo had said earlier today, once you lose a high school automotive shop, you're not getting it. You're not getting it back, okay? And in some cases, what they've done is they've hijacked what was the auto shop and turned it into a science lab or something like that. And now there's no space left if you wanted to try to do anything else. So those were the feeder systems to the JCs and to UTI and all of that. So people who had an interest in doing that kind of thing and had a future, perhaps, I thought they had a future doing that kind of stuff, started at that level and then grew up into that as a career as it goes along. So I love the idea of having the cars that the auto shops have a chance to look at and play with and learn from. I just think we have to do everything we can to make sure that we don't lose any more. And if we can reverse the trend and start moving the other way, anything that we can do to do that, I think would be a big plus. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. And Johan.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Bud was saying, Cal ABC has been working with high schools and community colleges for 32 years to keep auto shop programs open. And it's been heartbreaking to us when we donate equipment, resources, and then have the shop get closed down because the instructor retired. And I know Ruben Parra, he's on the line. He knows every time we lose an automotive instructor, the easiest solution for the school is close the program. And it's been a very tough battle. The one thing it did refresh my memory in working with Rocky and the team is we're 108,000 technicians short of what we need to fix cars in the United States today. And with all the auto shops being closed and the programs being closed at the high school and community college level, it makes it very tough. I mean, we often talk about the donation of equipment. Cal ABC has donated over $2.1 million worth of equipment to automotive shops, automotive school programs, and many of those programs have been closed since then. Almost $250,000 in scholarship monies, and all that money is gone, and what do we got to show for it? So the good news is, on all the upside of that, is there's currently the 3 career tech education bills that are moving through. If the governor signs it, I'm very hopeful he does, but we're in a budget deficit, so I don't know. It may be on life support. But if he signs it, we got $450 million that's going to go to career tech education that will help fund these programs. So we're hopeful that that happens. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Nothing on the webcast? No? Zach did remind me not to take away any contributions that Bud might have had on this topic, but Elisa Reinhardt from New Car Dealers Association.
Yep.
Yeah. So when she was previously on the bar advisory group. So thank you. Want to credit her for coming up with this idea, and I'm sure Bud had a hand in it as well. So thank you both. Let's thank you, Denise. Great presentation. Let's go to our next presenter. Enforcement Licensing Modernization, or ELM update. Clay Leak from the Bureau's Executive Office. Up again.
Thank you, Pat. All right. Going to give you guys a quick update on our Enforcement Licensing Modernization Project, or the ELM project. Going back to kind of when modernization efforts started within the DCA community, the BREEZE project, there was originally a goal of consolidating all DCA entities into a single licensing and enforcement system. Release 3, which included BAR, was canceled in January of 2015. 18 regulatory entities still using Breeze, and the remaining regulatory entities kind of in different processes and different statuses in terms of their modernization efforts, which includes BAR. Going back to kind of the formation of our project, the ELM project, we took a really close look at what had happened as part of the DCA, Business Modernization Cohort 1, which was the first kind of group of boards and bureaus to seek modernization under the DCA umbrella. We decided to leverage an enterprise agreement that DCA had reached with a product called Inlumon, and had planned to also leverage some additional environments that were available to us. We went out and obtained some implementation services through the Department of General Services software licensing program, and scoped a minimally viable product, or an MVP, really focused on licensing and externally facing capabilities. A lot of the things I kind of touched on earlier: accepting initial licenses online, processing renewals online, accepting CE online, all that sort of stuff, right? So going back again, a little more history on the ELM project. The project was approved and delegated back to BAR and DCA April 25th of 2022. We executed the contract a few days later, kicked off the project on May 4th, and unfortunately, as of May 3rd of 2023, we stopped development work on the Inlumon platform, which was originally selected. Why did we do that? The short, some unanticipated complexity. I think there was a lot of assumptions made on the state side and also on the vendor side in terms of some of the integration with CAS and ATS, which are the legacy systems that support licensing and enforcement. We saw some quality issues that really concerned us. And most importantly, we saw some constraints in terms of resources. This particular vendor had several projects in flight under the DCA umbrella. Business Modernization Cohort 2 was approved a very, very close time to when the ELM project was approved. There was also some additional work coming really soon around AB 107. So we kind of got together as a community, looked at some of the resource contention and looked at the projects in flight. And the ELM project was the one that kind of made the most sense to pump the brakes on and start to look at alternate pathways forward. So we've pivoted the project. The project's not done. We still have the same business goals and objectives we did and have had for decades, frankly. I'm still pushing forward. We are still pushing forward really diligently. We submitted a special project report to the Department of Technology and our agency that's under review right now, basically for schedule. Anytime you deviate from your project baseline by more than 10%, you have to let everybody know why and explain why. So we are pivoting. We are continuing to push forward. We are actually looking at a product called Simply Gov, which was recently implemented for the, for the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology Hearing and Aid Dispensers Board. Sorry, that's a mouthful. I think they call it, is it SLABIDA habita? Is that the short? I'll just say SLABIDA habita moving forward, because I don't know that I'm going to get that out again. But Simply Gov has done some really great work with this particular board. Really impressive solution. They've done a lot of the publicly facing stuff. If anybody's renewed their license lately with DMV, Simply Gov's a real key player over at the Department of Motor Vehicles as well as Secretary of State, and has a footprint kind of nationwide as well. I think they're in 18 states at this point. So really impressive product. The benefits of this pivot, ultimately, I think we probably get to market faster, even though obviously we've had some delays here kind of pivoting to this new solution, getting the special project report done and some new contracts that are in flight. The more mature platform, really impressed with the capabilities of this platform right out of the box. It truly is a low-code, no-code type of solution, and ultimately a less complex solution that I think we'll be able to care and feed a lot more efficiently over time. So in terms of next steps, I touched on the special project report, or the SPR. We are moving forward with some procurements around Simply Gov, both for product and services. And our targets, I'm gonna throw these out there and hope they stick, but I feel really good about these targets, and we're gonna continue to march towards these, even though they're aggressive. Looking for an online initial ARD application before the end of the year. Station licenses online by March, individual licenses by July, and changes in renewals September of next year. So these are aggressive, but I say this all the time, shoot for the stars, hit the lamppost, and shoot for the lamppost, you hit the curb. So we're gonna keep shooting for the stars and keep driving. This is, it's obviously disappointed when you hit a delay, you hit a speed bump, but we're gonna keep pushing forward. These are services that, the industry needs, the industry deserves, and that, like I've said before, we're overdue delivering. So until somebody tells me to stop, we're gonna keep moving ahead, and appreciate all your support as we march through this process. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Clay. Any questions, comments? Yeah, Anthony.
Yes, so I've worked with a number of dealers over the past year or so as the Department of Motor Vehicles, I think last summer, transitioned to an online portal for the dealer license and salesperson license process. And I certainly understand and appreciate there's tremendous benefits to moving in that direction. And it sounds like you're using the same system potentially that they have, but it did create a lot of confusion. And it took within the industry, and it did take several months. I'd say six months-ish after the program became live, and it was a requirement that there was a lot of confusion, and in particular during the dealership buy-sell process, where there's a lot of urgency and that people are used to a certain way of handling things. Transitioning it to a new, better way of handling things does require raising awareness, and there can be glitches in the system that can create can be sources of frustration on all ends. So I just want to raise that as just a point to consider when you're rolling this out, to really make sure that you have a process in place that you're comfortable, that all the stakeholders have been educated about it, and also it's relatively free from those errors to the extent you can minimize the likelihood that there are issues in the process that prevent an applicant from moving forward with a common issue. A big issue for new car dealers was I think it was the OL 124, which was the manufacturer approval of the new car dealership license. Many cases was only provided at the date of the buy-sell. And the system that was put in place contemplated that as being part of the initial application process. So there were issues with just the mechanics of how the system was built out and the logic of how it was built out with just how the reality of the world operated. So really just want to raise that as something to be aware of. We can be really excited about these changes, and there's a lot of great benefits of moving in that direction. But I think it might make sense to have a pilot project or to get some actual stakeholders involved before fully moving in that direction, unless you're very comfortable that the system that you have built out is pretty error-free, because we were managing quite a bit of incoming calls from very frustrated members about the system last winter and fall. And the DMV did a Herculean job to resolve those inquiries, but it was on an individualized basis where they had to kind of override some programming on their end. So wanted to raise that as an issue and something to consider.
No, I appreciate that. Certainly been a part of a lot of large projects, and the change management part and the stakeholder outreach piece is often overlooked. Certainly a critical part of any modernization project, that especially one that goes out and touches the public. So appreciate the words of caution. DMV's been moving really quickly on a large number of modernization efforts. So it's exciting, but obviously with that pace of change comes some of those potential risks for errors and emissions. But certainly something we'll keep an eye on really closely as we get close to the deployment and make sure we manage the outreach and the communication. One benefit of the kind of the strategy or the approach with this particular project is if somebody still wants to submit a piece of paper, we'll still accept a piece of paper just like we do today. So we're not taking any of the legacy processes off the table. There'll just be a new online process to kind of supplement that for people that are ready to do that, which most people are at this point, but
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Anthony and Clay, for the response.
were the lights turning off a symbol?
Yeah, that threw me for a
symptom to get
minute.
a.
I need to go put an order in the slot.
Any other questions or comments for Clay?
Good job.
Anything from the audience? Anything on the webcast? I did miss one from the Cars from School presentation. My apologies, I stepped away. Ruben Parra just had said, and Ruben is a bar advisory group member who couldn't be here today. One way to help is to join your local school's advisory committee. That was a comment from him. Sorry about that. Anyway, thank you, Clay.
Thank you.
Yep, more to follow. More to stay tuned. All right, here to give a presentation, our annual presentation on smog check reports. The 2023 reports are done and have been submitted. Jonathan G., or John G. as I know him, at Bar Engineering. Or welcome, John.
I'm Jonathan G. I'm Jonathan G. I'm the supervisor of the Program Evaluation and Referee Unit inside Bar Engineering. We have two annual reports that my unit is responsible for. The first being the U.S. EPA report. So that report is an annual report required by federal regulation, and that it requires state monitoring and evaluation of smog check programs or IM programs for each state and region of the U.S. It also, the report is a compilation of program data on inspection volume, failure rates, number of inspection stations, and other information, et cetera. It's a very detailed report as outlined by their requirements. Every odd number year, that report requires additional summary of changes to smog check programs. So this year, we actually had additional information that outlined how our program changed. And that report is submitted to the US EPA through CARB, or California Air Resources Board, and they submit that on July 31st every year. That report is not on our website. It is available upon request to BAR. The second report, which is mostly what this presentation is about, is the Smog Check Performance Report. So that's required by Health and Safety Code 44024.5B. It's an annual assessment of roadside inspection data failure rates versus the smog check program failure rates. It also has an indication of program performance. There's an estimation of how we could get additional tons per day reductions. It's also independently reviewed by CSERT, or that's UC Riverside Center of Environmental Research and Technology. And that's posted July 1st every year. That is currently on our website. This year's the 2023 report. Also to note, AB 1263, or the Sunset Report, has language in it to change this report to a 2-year requirement, not every year. So depending on when that bill's passed, we may do next year's report, or we may do 2025 as the next time we do it. And I apologize, this slide has an error on it. The original, this is just an overview of the original smog check performance report. That was done in 2009, not 1990. That was done by Sierra Research before there was the Health and Safety Code requirement for BAR to actually do it. So in that report, one of the major takeaways was this quote: "Many of the vehicles that initially failed during the previous smog check cycle were not actually repaired or repaired only temporarily." So that was a big takeaway from that report. In other words, when the vehicle's repaired, it's done very poorly, so it fails again very quickly within months. You can have a failing condition vehicle again. The report also talked about we should refine how we do station performance algorithms for increased enforcement, and that's kind of where STAR came from. It came out of that report. There should be incentives for high station performance, also part of STAR. We should perform confirmatory testing immediately following certification through either roadsides or on-site testing. So we do that today. We should continue roadside inspections to audit smog check and target low-performing stations. We also do that today. This graph here, this shows smog check and roadside failure rates. So on the x-axis, you've got new vehicles, like 0 years old, to the right, 25-year-old vehicles. The blue line, that's the smog check failure rate for those age of vehicles with our current data. The orange line is showing the roadside failure rate. So as you'll see on the left, it's flat, it's 0. That's because we don't test those vehicles in roadside, so we don't have a failure rate. But as those vehicles get older, they start to separate from what the smog check failure rate is. So the major findings from this year's report, for the 2021 to 2022 time period, our failure rate was 14% compared to the previous time frame of 2020 to 2021. So that was the year before's failure rate. So we're actually decreasing the overall failure rate in the program. Vehicles that were certified at high-performing smog check stations failed at a lower rate at roadside compared to those vehicles that were certified at a low FPR score station. So if you had a good station did the smog on that vehicle, they seem to last longer and the repairs last longer if it's a high-performing station. There were also incremental improvements to the program, evidenced by a declining overall failure rate, as the first bullet talks about. The narrowing difference between roadside failure rate and smog check failure rates, as that graph kind of indicated, there was that separation, but that's decline. It's getting tighter over time, and we'll see another slide later that shows that. And we have increased enforcement actions against stations and technicians involved in fraudulent activity. So this graph indicates this shrinking between the failure rate of roadside and the regular smog check stations. So it is historical. We go 2017 on the left and then 2022 on the right. And you can see that trend line is showing a decreased failure rate at roadside, which is the blue. The blue bars are roadside and the orange are the smog check stations. So we're seeing improvement over time. So bar enforcement activities from 2016 to 2022, BAR filed 1,253 data-only cases. And these are cases based on data we collected from the smog check through OIS data or BAR 97 data. That data indicated fraud, and so of those cases, we had 1,136 license revocations, 323 suspensions or probations. We have continued administrative disciplinary action against stations suspected of clean piping, clean gassing, clean plugging, and clean tanking. So those are the 4 major categories of fraud that we see. And we're also we're currently working, and we have worked with the Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV, to significantly reduce registration-based fraud. And that would be skipping the smog check requirement. They can do that at some of the business partners. They can just skip over it. So we're trying to reduce that fraud. So we have a few indications of program improvement. Vehicles that were certified by stations that were subsequently revoked after that certification, their failure rate is consistently higher at roadside compared to those stations that were in good standing. So in other words, the vehicle got smogged at a bad performing station, we close them down, and then we see later on when we catch them at the roadside, their failure rate indeed was higher overall. So those stations were bad. We should have closed them down. So that was an effective measure that we took. Vehicles certified by stations with higher follow-up pass rate, or FBRs, consistently have a lower failure rate at roadside compared to those with lower FBRs. So again, this indicates high-performing stations on our metrics have lower failure rates in in-use testing or roadside testing. So if you have an average station, they don't have as good of a failure rate. And again, vehicles certified at star stations failed at a lower rate than non-star stations. Again, that's kind of the same thing. So BAR and CARB work together to estimate how much we could get improvements out of our smog check program. They estimated 56 tons per day could be reduced in both ROG, which is reactive organic gases, and NOx, which is oxide of nitrogen, if all of our stations in our program were high performing. You know, that's a high bar. I hope we can get there, but that's a lot of emissions we could reduce every day. The report also contains a brief overview of the highlights of the 50 states. So we look at all the smog check program, or all the IM programs in the U.S. Key takeaways: California is the third largest network, meaning the most stations in the U.S., behind New York and Pennsylvania. Although I think our test volumes probably exceed both of those states by a lot. Nationwide, over 2021 to 2022, there was a decrease in the size of programs. California lost 1,000 stations roughly, and Tennessee ended their light duty testing program completely, although it was only 16 stations. We have five state IM contractors in the U.S. Opus Gordon Darby is 17 states and Washington, D.C. A-Plus Technologies has 6 states. Worldwide Environmental covers 4 states. Parsons Engineering is 3 states, and Encore currently just has California. As another note, 13 states and Washington, D.C. conduct safety inspections along with their emissions IM programs. So here's the good stuff out of the report. Specific recommendations of how we should move forward. Centralized testing for pre-1996 model year vehicles. This is non-OBD. And more frequent inspecting, annually or a fix-it ticket basis, where if they get a ticket, they're required to get a smog check to get that ticket resolved. There was recommendations to reduce the number of refuseniks at roadsides. So refusenik is a term we coined for people refusing to get a test. It's their right to refuse a test. It's not required. But COVID especially really increase the number of people refusing for health reasons, for whatever reason. They just say no, and then we can't sample random because they're pulled randomly anyways at the roadside, but then they refuse, and it's kind of messing up our random sampling. We're also working with CHP to get them to recommit to helping us with roadside inspections, so that we're having a lot of off days where CHP is unavailable for a lot of reasons. They can't come and help us. And so we can't sample if we don't have a CHP officer. We have to have one. We also were recommended to perform special roadside evaporative testing. So this would be targeted testing to see how the evap systems on vehicles are performing. Another recommendation was incorporate fraud triggers into the BAR 97 OIS. We currently do have fraud triggers in the BAR OIS. That's the OBD only. Those triggers, there are triggers for BAR 97, but they're currently not implemented, so we can't stop the fraud at the source, which would be during the testing cycle. There are also recommendations to include otherwise exempted vehicles within the directed sample. So we have a directed sample of vehicles that we test. We want to include some exempt vehicles that we currently don't test at all. There are recommendations to adopt supplemental elements to improve effectiveness and convenience. This would be remote OBD. You stick it under the dash and you check the OBD status all the time with the vehicle. OBD kiosks, so this would be maybe at a DMV, instead of waiting in line, you could just plug in there. Or mobile test platforms, so you could have somebody come to you and do a smog check. We're also working and will work with CARB on future revisions to the MFAC model, and that's how they base the effectiveness of the smog check program. That's how they calculate it. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Any questions, comments? Yep. Jack Molodonov.
Thank you for the presentation. I had a question on your recommendations. The centralized testing of pre-1996, which was on page 6. Just what are you envisioning there?
I don't know if I'm the appropriate person to speak
Oh,
to
okay.
that.
I don't know. Well, the legislature's got a hand in this, obviously, with our sunset bill. This mirrors one of the provisions in the bill to allow the Bureau to contract out for a vendor to manage that on behalf of the Bureau. That could include a centralized network operating under that vendor. I want to say similar to what we have established with our referee program. Obviously, those are through the California Community colleges, and I think we've got 30 some odd sites. Something of that size probably would need a little under, because the volume is much greater than the volume we see at referee, would probably need to be bigger and supplemented with as the legislation allows for subcontracts with, I think what's envisioned is higher performing star stations that would fill in the gaps where inspection volume is needed in harder to reach areas, or just the sheer volume of vehicles needing to be tested can't be done by one centralized station or network of stations. So
that recommendation is in SB 1263.
AB 1263. Yeah, the sunset bill.
1263, the sunset bill.
Yeah.
Will that require regulations as you move forward, or is that enough of the authority to go ahead and grant to go ahead
I
with
think
that
most of it could be handled under the terms of the contract, to the extent that you're going to the Bureau is going to involve our licensed network into the contract ability with the vendor, the centralized vendor. That probably some of those details would have to be worked out in regulation. I haven't really thought it through, to be honest with you, but good question.
Okay.
Regulations always help clarify some of those details that can't be, because the statute only can speak to so much. And it gives us the authority to kind of fill in the gaps. So I could see some benefit from some of the regulations, but a contract is going to be having most of the details with the vendor on how to manage that program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for answering that, Pat.
Well, fill in anything I just I made up on the fly there that wasn't accurate. No, it remains to be seen, but I think probably a combination of a contract and regulations. All right, other questions or comments? And one from the audience. Yes, come forward. Can you come forward to the, I'm sorry to drag you out of the chair there, but this is being recorded, and they will ask me to bring you forward anyway, so save a step there. And is the mic on?
Jim Todd with Opus Inspection. Just curious for the roadside, is it possible to modify regulation to have county sheriff assist with that?
We have been looking into that, so
Seems
that's
to
a
me to
possibility.
be easier to get those guys to show up.
Yeah, the CHP, though, they like their jurisdiction, so.
Thank you.
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about that one. Thank you for the question. Additional questions, comments? Anything on the? Nothing on the webcast, from the webcast through the email. All right, John, until next year, if not sooner, I don't know, maybe we'll have another presentation opportunity, but this topic will come up again next July.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're coming to the end here. We have 2 handouts that we do each quarter and provide on our website. Quarterly reports on enforcement statistics, as well as our licensing program statistics. Any questions or comments? Kind of combine those into one. one opportunity to respond to either or both of those reports. Anything from anyone? Or just standard reporting requirements that we've placed on ourselves? And anything from the audience? No? Okay. Now, for public comment on items not on the agenda. Anything that just is on your mind that wasn't discussed today? Like, yeah, Bud Rice.
Thank you, Bud Rice. Last time coming up today, just so you know. Let me just make this comment. I'm going to use the term bar ecosystem, and let's assume that involved bar, shops, and customers. Just to talk about that in general terms. I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to talk a little bit, and then if I could, Pat, if you could kind of follow up and respond a little bit. What I'd like to get out of you, if you could be king for a day, not that you're not, how would you like shops and industry to interface with in a way to help provide better, higher quality delivery to the customers? I kind of like to get your thoughts on that in a second. Second comment I want to make is when we hear the presentations, and even the last one, where we were talking about enforcement, and you had 1,253 actions, 1,136 revocations, and 323 suspensions. I would encourage BAR to have some line item in these sessions we do, and I'm going to use the word story time. I'll just use that term, story time. And I'll pick on Bill. Bill Thomas and I are old buddies by now, and if it was story time with Bill Thomas, okay, and Bill comes up and he tells a couple of stories, okay, and the stories are about things that you guys have seen when you've been out and about. I'm telling you, if you've got stories that you can tell, we will go back with those stories, and it will impact how we interface with our crews. It will, okay? So as an example, if you said, here comes Bill Thomas for Bill Thomas story hour. He goes, hey, guys, what happened the other day is they let a customer drive a car into the bay, okay? Don't let a customer drive a car into the bay, but this shop did that, and a guy is in front, and he's telling the customer, come in, come in, come in, and then boom, and the guy goes, boom, and now he's on the hood, and he looks up, and he's looking at the customer, and he goes, okay? And then the customer pulls back, and the guy falls down, and they got to get an ambulance and take the guy away. Do not let customers drive cars into the bay. We look at a list of things, like these enforcement things, and we go away, and those are numbers. That's a story that we leave with that we can talk about with our crew, okay? If he had another story, and the story was, shop had a rack that was broken, and the metal part you put up was missing on this one, so they put a block of wood up, and they used that block of wood instead of the metal piece that you would put up for your rack. Guys, again, this is Bill Thomas, right? Guys, balsa wood is not wood. So if you use a balsa piece of wood like this shop did, the car tipped over, fell off the rack, almost got another tech, and now this car is over here on the side, and the customers wound up. We got this big action we're trying to do. Do not do that. I'm telling you, we go away with those kinds of stories, and they impact more than people that are here. I just want to say that to you. Thank you.
Okay. John, go ahead.
Figure might as well piggyback onto what Bud just said. I think one of the important things that we've been doing is when Bill Thomas would come up and give the presentation on the statistics and the complaints and the types of complaints. And I know we get the handout, and I know it took a considerable amount of time to go through that report sometimes. But I think the important thing for everybody that's in the audience and that's online is, to me, in all the years that I've been working with the BAR since 1987, that's the most valuable tool that we ever had. Because when we were on the centralized program, I would get this report all the way back to 87. And what I used it for was to look at the complaint trends, complaint types, and to Bud's point, is that became training material for me. That is stuff that I would work with our training center and say, well, you know, the comeback problems that we're having with tune-ups, this is what BAR is seeing with their consumer complaints. And we started to formalize this list of what were the general types of complaints that we were seeing within our company and also what BAR was seeing. So we started naming them. And for general terms, for the industry, it's comebacks, okay? So that was, okay, how do you address that? You come up with a program fixed right the first time. Because if we don't fix it right the first time, you're gonna lose a customer. What's the next complaint? Well, multiple returns, that ties in with comebacks. Next one was the 5 o'clock surprise. Well, what the heck's a 5 o'clock surprise? Well, the customer showed up and the wife approved the add-on. He knew nothing about it. And now all of a sudden he's looking at a $400 bill instead of a $250 bill. Well, we can't have 5 o'clock surprises. And so the point in all of that is the complaint information is a gold mine. Because we sit there and we digest all of that. We dissect it. We figure out what are the common complaints that the BAR field and offices in Sacramento, the 800 line, the website. What are all those complaints telling us? And what can we use as an industry to become better, to do a better job with our customers? And so, again, story time with Bill Thomas. Okay, maybe that's a simple way of saying, you know, sometimes it would be helpful if we get behind those numbers, you know, because numbers don't lie, but they fail to tell the story of how can we use those numbers as we as an industry can improve and do a better job with our customers. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for that. Those observations and comments. We'll take those under consideration to have Bill bring a bedtime story to all of us.
You're gonna get whiplash,
you know,
Bill.
we joke about the stories, but Bill, I mean, they are enlightening, and they do, I don't know, bring some of these numbers and the data that we share with you kind of to life, and are invaluable, I think. And we did try to do this a few times, and we'll look to do it some more. Last year, I think it was, and maybe even going back a couple years, where we had, what do we call them, complaint studies, and we tried to do case studies. We did one on auto body, we did one on smog check, we did one on one other area, I can't remember. But we'll look to maybe think about doing some of those going forward on I won't say maybe every meeting, but maybe every couple of meetings. We'll have something that can come to life for all of you rather than just looking at a report with a bunch of data and statistics. So, if I was king for day, wasn't that the question?
Yeah. If you had your druthers.
You said, if I'm kind of maybe paraphrasing a little bit, what would I like to do for shops to interact with BAR to make a more positive experience for consumers? Something along those lines. And I'm going to give it some more thought, but just off the top of my head, I think there's got to be opportunities for us to do town halls or meetings where we can bring the two of us as a regulator and industry before the consumer, and not show it as necessarily adversarial, but as a partnership on behalf of the consumer. I don't know how to do that right now on the spot, but certainly one venue that is open to everyone is the Right at Right experience. I know that's for the benefit of the shop owner and their employees, but if there's a way to somehow bring the consumers into some of those presentations or venues. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, but those are always available as ways to bring bar to the shop, and I'm not sure that it does help improve the consumer experience, even if the consumers aren't physically there or present for those presentations. I was just thinking along those lines, and maybe those can be enhanced to include consumers. I don't know. Anyway, we'll think about it some more back at bar, but if you guys have some ideas out there, I'm all ears. Any other public comment on items that are not on the agenda today? I did not get anything on the webcast email address. So we'll move right on to our final agenda item is our next bar advisory group meeting will be Thursday, October 19th. And are we in this room? Again, in person only with webcast, and the meeting in January, if the bill that we mentioned earlier today is signed into law, we'll have that teleconference ability starting with the first meeting of the year in January. Any questions or comments about our next meeting in October? Okay. Just one item relating to it, as we already noted, we will have Tess Dubois Carey coming back to the October meeting as she was unable to present today. We are at 12:22 p.m. and we will adjourn the meeting today. Thank you all for attending. It was a great meeting.